here. We know your time is valuable, and we do appreciate your time. And so we're going to go ahead and start our webinar. Right now, all of you are on mute just because of how many are on the line and background noise. But if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the question box or the chat box, and I'd be glad to get through them at the end of the presentation. But I do want to let's see if we can get this going here. There we go. I would like to thank Ernie and Dan for sponsoring this with All Care Distributors over in New Jersey. They've been in business for over 21 years, and I know Ernie's been in the industry for over 41 years. So I'd like to thank Ernie, Dan, and all the staff for sponsoring this. But there's going to be a lot of changes going on in the restoration industry, especially with the IRCRCS 500. Coming later this year, or probably the beginning of the first quarter of 2014, the IRCRCS 500 are going to have some changes. And one of the three biggest changes that they're going to have is they're going to teach more about teachings of vapor pressure differential, more information on heat drying, and more emphasis on tracking surface temperature. So one of my favorite sayings is, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. And I guarantee you, if you've never heard of this presentation before, you will look at flood jobs completely different. Because right now, the industry is really just based on temperatures of the air, relative humidity of the air, GPP of the air. So we're going to look at things a little bit differently, and bear with me. I have a cold, so I apologize for the sniffles. I'm over. At least I'm in Phoenix and not in front of your desk getting you guys sick, so I apologize. However, in the restoration business, one of the hardest things is to get business, period. And there's really three things we're competing against: franchises, other competitors, and vendor programs. So we have a special 3-day marketing event. It's called Planning to Win. And the next one is going to be in Nashville, May 6th through the 8th. And so I'd highly recommend writing down this website. It's called planningtowin.biz. And what we do is teach you how to separate yourself from your competition. And if we can help you separate yourself, then you're going to obviously make more money. The question that I have for you is, do you have a written marketing plan? And if you don't, we're going to show you how to do one, and we're actually going to help you create one. So highly recommend going to this. This has a money-back guarantee. That's how confident they are in this program. So if you decide to go and you're like, John, I did not learn a thing, we will cut you a check and give you your money back. That's how confident we are. There is an early bird special right now, so go ahead and get that going. And you can save $200. So again, check out planningtowin.biz. Also wanted to, I know we're talking about heat drying, but we also wanted to show you something new that's never been presented to the industry before. We know that there's been remote sensoring. However, we'd like to introduce you, we're doing a soft launch per se, and this is the remote field commander. And how this works, from your cell phone, iPad, tablet, or computer, you can actually turn on or off your equipment. It'll also tell you when your equipment has been turned off, especially at nighttime when the customers do that. It's not when or if they do it, it's when they do it, right? So this equipment will allow you to get have that technology at the tip of your fingers. And how this technology works is there's a SIM card similar to your cell phone that as soon as you plug it into the power outlet, it looks for a cell phone tower. At that point, that'll give you the information that goes onto our web browser, and from your computer or tablet or cell phone, it'll tell you what's going on in the environment. And how this works is that there's sensors and power controllers. So these are the power controllers. We plug that into the outlet, plug that into a DHU, an air mover, an E-tes, a desiccant, an injected dry, it doesn't matter, ozone machine, whatever you want. And this will send a radio frequency to either turn on or turn off, whenever you'd like. The sensors are running off of 5 different readings. It's giving you air temperature, relative humidity, surface temperature, GPP, moisture content. Okay, so that's 5 different readings at the same time. All the sensors are going to be in the different rooms, the affected rooms as well as the unaffected rooms, so you can see the comparison. And then that information is going to be sent to the web browser, and from your cell phone or computer you can turn on or off. You can actually run up to 14 sensors and 14 remote power controllers in one home or commercial building. There is a monthly service charge for the base station. It's $95 a month. However, in Xactimate, the code WTR remote is $55 a day. However, you guys live in New Jersey, New York, you guys have a job that's an hour and a half, 2 hours away, depending on traffic, and you don't need to actually go on the job maybe the second day, but you need and are required by the insurance carriers to have all your data. You have this equipment, you can save time, you can save gas. So if you're interested, let us know. We'd be glad to talk to you a little bit more about this. It does provide you a graph and a timestamp, and because the information is going into the clouds and you cannot delete or manipulate the readings, you now have third-party verification of what's going on in the environment. So right now we have a 90-day money-back guarantee trial period. It is $19.95. There is no monthly service charge for the first 90 days. So during the trial period, if you don't pay for any monthly service charge, but if after the or before the 90 days is up, if you're not happy with it, we will refund your money. So if you're interested, give me a call on my cell phone, 727-657-1563, and we do have training video programs. We do have online phone support, and we do one-on-one webinar training so you can learn how to use the system. So if you, like I said, if you're more interested, more details, let us know. We'd be glad to get back with you on that. So let's talk about the tests and E-tests. Extraction is still very, very important when we're on a flood job. However, if you have a test or an E-test, the new E-tes low-profile unit now has gone from 22 inches in height down to 13 inches in height. The air mover comes in from the backside instead of on top. All air movers in the industry now fit. I know we had some difficulties with some other ones, but the design is a lot different now, a lot easier to carry, and we did change the heating element, so we are getting also a little bit more heat. And the unit's only 36 pounds to carry. I will tell you right now that the response from the customers are unbelievable. They just love the system. You will use the E-tes along with your dehumidifier. This does not replace dehumidification. This works with your dehumidifiers, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Don't forget, we also still have the actual test unit. This is what we actually started with. This system here runs off of a boiler system. You are going to get a lot more heat out of this system. It only runs off of 8 amps and 1.5 to 2 gallons an hour of propane. And how the system works is the heat goes through the boiler system, and it goes through this red hose, through the gray box, through the blue hose. And all it's doing is flowing with hot fluid. The air mover grabs the heat and transfers the heat to where you want it to go. There is a 200,000 BTU system that runs off of, that you get 4 boxes, and you can add a 5th if you want. The 250 system comes with 5 boxes, and you can add a 6th. In Xactimate, you're getting $1,700 a day. but the heat coming out of it, it's super quiet and running only off of 8 amps. You can't beat it. We do have a demoed unit that's going for $19,995. That's with a trailer. It comes with an E-tes Classic, shelving, propane tanks, you name it. It's ready to go. It comes with a free admission to the Planning to Win, which is $11.95, and then we also pay half of your Reach Drying Academy class, which teaches you how to dry a structure in 2 days using the E-tes and other systems. So if you're interested, again, give me a call and we can talk a little bit more about that. But the actual test unit can operate outside while it's snowing or raining, but most of the time it's in a trailer mount system, as you can see here. Very quiet, you cannot tell it's home on, and inside the trailer lots of room for DEHUs, air movers, and others. Well, let's do some science a little bit. Which room will dry faster? Room number 1 has a relative humidity of 65%, air temperature is 75 degrees, GPP is 84. The other room is 65%, air temperature 95 degrees, and the GPP is 163. Now, I did not give you one measurement of readings because you don't track it now, so I'll share it with you later. But which room do you think will dry faster? Now, most people will say room number 1 because the GPP is lower. Some guys will say number 2 because the temperature of the air is higher. But then if we say number 2 because the temperature of the air is higher, our GPP is off the charts. And we've been taught that if we lower the grains in the room, the moisture comes out of the material. So if we lower the grains, guess what also is lowered? Your dew point. If I lower the dew point, your dehues actually become less efficient. So what dehumidifiers love is high GPP, high dew point. That means you're actually going to get more water in the bucket. Now, all manufacturers who make dehumidifiers have to do a test rating at AHEM, and it's 80 degrees temperature, 60% relative humidity. But then they do another testing. It's called saturation, and that's at 90 degrees temperature and 90% humidity. And the reason they do that is because then they can actually get more water in the bucket, and then they'll say, well, we got 130 pints at AHEM, and we got 230 pints at saturation. So what that really means is this. If it's the temperature of the air is hotter and there's more humidity in the room, your dehues actually work better. And that's what the test and E-tes does. It's actually going to make your dehues work more efficient instead of less efficient. Something to think about. Here's a fact. To increase the evaporation rate, we need to increase the temperature of the water, not the air. When you and I were little kids, the teachers taught us, class, every single time you heat water, it will evaporate. She never said every time you lower the GPP in a room, you'll evaporate the water. Guys, outside of our world of drying, the science of evaporation in high schools, elementary schools, and universities is all based on vapor pressure. And that's what we're going to discuss today. One of the hardest parts to dry in a wet structure is the sill place. Okay? You know that, and I know that, right? So the hardest part to dry is in the sill plates. So what happens is a lot of guys cut the drywall because they're afraid of mold, right? Well, let's say Ernie's master bedroom's flooded, and the temperature of the air is 70 degrees. If the air temperature is 70 degrees, what's the temperature of the wet material? It's not 70 degrees because that would mean it's the same temperature of the air, which means it's dry. It would be cooler. And then what happens is we put these air movers across this wet material every 10, 12 feet, because that's what we've been taught. And then when the temperature is wet, we got air movers blowing across it, and guess what happens to the temperature of the material for a while? It actually cools down. And your evaporation slows down. And that's the reason why, guys, it takes 3, 4, 5 days to dry your wet structure. Now, the reason why the IRC or CS500 already says that you need to track surface temperature, and the new revised S500 is going to say the same thing, is because of this. For every 20 degrees, for every 18 to 20 degrees that you raise the temperature of the wet material, you double the evaporation rate. Let me repeat that again. For every 18 to 20 degrees that you raise the temperature of the wet material, you double the evaporation rate or you double the vapor pressure, and that's what creates faster evaporation. So if your temperature of the wet material went from 65 degrees to 85 degrees, you just double the evaporation rate. 85 to 105, 105 to 125, you doubled it. You doubled it again. That's why we call this drying direct heat drying, because we're trying to direct the heat to the wet materials. Most of our flood work, and it all depends in each city, but most of our flood work is wet from the floor up. So from 2 feet down is wet, from 2 feet to the ceiling is dry. So why are we so worried about drying the air if all we really need to do is get the heat to the wet materials? So in this picture, I'm floating the carpet. As you can see, my heat is along the sill plates. So my heat is going to get to the water, and that is going to create faster evaporation. Matter of fact, the carpet and pad will be dry in 3 to 4 hours. I'm not worried about the carpet and pad. I'm worried about the structure. And at 95 degrees, which you might want to write this down, at 95 degrees and higher, we put it in an unfavorable state for mold growth. It's too hot for mold to grow, as well as we've already removed a lot of the moisture. So why would mold grow if there's no moisture, right? So in Dry-Ease, on Chapter 7, page 81 of their new guide to restorative drying, it says greater rates of evaporation will occur when liquid water is made warmer and when drier air is moved more rapidly across the wet surface. So what would happen to the rates of evaporation if the water was hotter, not warmer? Then we will increase our evaporation rate. So which method would evaporate the water out of the pot faster? I need you to evaporate the water out of the pot. You can put it on top of the stove. You can put it in the oven at 500 degrees. Which process would dry or evaporate faster? So we did some testing, and the one in the oven took 120 minutes and 16,000 BTUs, while the one on top of the stove took 24 minutes and 1,700 BTUs. Here's the reason. The reason the oven took so long is the vapor pressure of the water was close to the vapor pressure of the air, and that created slower evaporation. Here, where all my heat is, on the water, the vapor pressure of the water is so much higher than the vapor pressure of the air, it created faster evaporation. So when we're drying with conventional dryer, DEUs and air movers, gentlemen, your evaporation, your vapor pressure of the wet material will always be close to the vapor pressure of the air. Always. That is the reason why it takes you so long to dry a structure. So if we can float, tent, contain, direct, keep the heat to the wet material, and increase the temperature of the wet material, that will increase your evaporation rate and dry your structures faster. So when we do this, when we heat the wet material, this increases the GPP in the room. And so we have to either use dehumidification or evacuation, as we see in this picture, and remove the moist air. On the back of your clothes dryers at home, do you have a dehumidifier or an exhaust? You have an exhaust. It's just removing the moist air. It's not waiting to turn it from a vapor to a liquid. It's just removing it as a vapor. So either way you can do this, to remove the moist air, you have to. So one E-tes is good for up to 500 square feet. And for every E-tes you have to have a large dehumidifier or an exhaust. in there. So that's your equation right there. Wood floors. So the first thing we need to do on a wood floor, gentlemen, is to hook it up to a portable or a truck mount. We've got to suck, as you can see this portable here, the blue hose, we've got to remove the water first. If you don't remove the water, your drying process isn't going to be very efficient. Then what happens is, after we're done, the industry usually puts these mat systems down, and then we got some air movers and some dehues in the room. And where does heat naturally go up? It goes up. Where's your water? It's down. So that's like your wife taking her blow dryer in the morning and aiming the blow dryer up in the air to dry her hair. You'd be like, honey, what are you doing? Oh, I'm drying my hair. I'm gonna heat the air first, and then that'll dry my hair. You'd be like, honey, why don't you just aim the blow dryer to your hair? That'll help faster. And then it works. But that sounds like a simple idea, but when you guys are just using air movers and dehues and you guys are just drying the air, that's like you taking your blow dryer and aiming it up in the air. We want to get the heat to the wet material. So on a wood floor, we're going to tent it. We're going to keep the heat down low. Wherever the water goes, the heat's going to go. And every single time we heat water, it will evaporate. The mat system's on a negative pressure, meaning it's sucking up. And so what happens is the heat's going into the cracks, getting the water, evaporating. The mat system's sucking a lot of that out. Some of the moist air is going to escape in between the sandbags. And then outside the containment, you have a large dehumidifier to remove the moist air. Because you guys love science, and it's always based on science, here's a graph. This blue line is the wood floor in the kitchen under the cabinets. And so we start the process, and it starts to get hot, and at 8 o'clock at night, what do you think the homeowner did? She turned it off. So we asked her to put it back on. Now we put it back on at 2 o'clock in the morning. My wood floor is 120 degrees. Now guess what's happening to the water? It's evaporating. Now if we did not heat the water, how long would this take to evaporate? It's based on science, guys. Every time we heat the water, it will create faster evaporation. You can't deny it. So that's why we recommend using the mat system, especially the injected dry mat system. The reason is it's 3 times stronger on negative pressure compared to the dry ease. Nothing against dry ease, but facts are facts. We want as much negative pressure as possible, and then you contain the heat. And as you can see, we're tenting it. We got the heat right where we want it to go. Another way of directing the heat would be the Flexi Dry unit. There's Velcro on each side of the Flexi Dry, so you can add actually up to 5 units to one E-tes. And in Xactimate, this is $80 a day. So for every Flexi Dry unit you use, it's $80 a day. So if you just use 4 of these, that's $320 a day in addition to the E-tes and air mover at $225 a day. And inside the wall cavities, we've got the heat going in. So for commercial units, homes with brick, plaster, concrete, doesn't matter, drywall, figure out where the water's at, get the heat to the water, and that's going to create faster evaporation. The air mover we'd highly recommend is the OmniDry 2.9 amp. It has a daisy chainable feature on it. It's got a 2-speed. And it actually has the highest feet per minute rating in the industry right now at 3,480 compared to the Phoenix and the Dry-Ease. And you know what, guys? What air movers blow out is air. It's not magic air. It's just air. And for the price of air movers, why spend $330 when you can spend $189? And the warranty is great. And the dependability is amazing. So that's an option. Now what does the IRC RCS 500 say? It says heat accelerates evaporation. Heat should be applied directly to the materials. Now this is what today's S500 says. The 2006 version. Restorers should manage both air and surface temperature in order to enhance drying and avoid potential-related damage. Partial or soft floating a carpet. Carpet acts as an insulator and holds heat close to the materials being dried. So when we float the carpet acts like an insulation blanket and keeps the heat right where we want it to go. We also have in the S500 it says drying walls, solid wood floors, the underside of subfloors can be accelerated by applying heat to the materials. So I got an E-tes on its back aiming up. I got a reverse tent, and my ceiling or my subfloor is 140 degrees. Guys, the subfloor 140 degrees, I'm going to dry that fast. So if I have a wood floor on top, I got my mat system, I've got that tented, I got a reverse tent, I got that going on. It's going to dry fast, right? It's simple science. So we go back to the that room number 1 and room number 2. The one thing I didn't tell you was that the surface temperature in room number 1 was only 70 degrees, and the surface temperature in the other room was 115 degrees. Well, the reason I didn't tell you that is because right now, guys, you don't track surface temperature. So you didn't care about the surface temperature in the beginning. But if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. Gentlemen, you really need to start tracking surface temperature. It's going to help you keep track of your evaporation rate faster. So what's also in the S500 is the actual definition of psychrometry. And it says evaporation occurs if the vapor pressure of the air is lower than the surface vapor pressure of the material. And that's the reason why they teach you to lower the grains in the room. So if we lower the grains in the room, then you will lower the vapor pressure in the air lower than the material, and that's what draws the moisture out. But if we reverse the definition, if you increase the vapor pressure of the wet material higher than the vapor pressure of the air, that will create faster evaporation. What is vapor pressure? Vapor pressure is a measure of a substance's propensity to evaporate. It increases exponentially with an increase in temperature. That's not from tests, that's not from dryings, that's not from Phoenix, that's from the EPA. That's based on science. The only way to increase vapor pressure in a wet material is to increase the temperature of the wet material. So a lot of you have thermal imaging cameras, and if you don't, you need to get one, okay? Because the technology is amazing. And in this picture here, we see that the sill plates is the last part to dry, and that heat rises. So at 60 degrees, do you think you're really going to dry that out fast? No, you're not. But if we direct the heat by floating the carpet, tenting it, containing it, now my sill plate's 132 degrees. Gentlemen, at 132 degrees on the wet material, you know you're going to dry that out fast. And guess what? The baseboard's still on there. If I heat the room, because I know some of you are already thinking, well, I'll just heat the room up. The heat will go to the ceiling and your sill plates will still be the last part. That's why there's a difference between heat drying and direct heat drying with the TES and E-tes. And here again, we're floating the carpet. My baseboard's still on there. And where's all my heat? Right at the sill plates. There is no way, guys, you're going to ever see this picture if you are just using air movers and dehues, or if you're just going to heat the room up, because heat rises. I need my heat right at the sill plates. That's going to help me drive my structures faster. So what are the experts saying? Even Kevin Fish and David Oakes says, many times on drying jobs we find ourselves dealing with hard-to-dry materials, a plastered wall or a stubborn subfloor. One of the best ways to help these materials dry faster is to raise their temperature. This increases the vapor pressure of the moisture in the material and forces the water out faster. Increasing surface temperature by only 20 degrees doubles the pressure associated with moisture in the material, and we effectively reduce drying time. Guys, this is not new. This has been around a lot, but it just hasn't been promoted in the classrooms. So the E-tes 120 and 240. It dries, monitors, controls, documents. The price of the 120 is $23.95 for the 120, $24.95 for the 240. And they are available at all care distributors if you'd like. But here's what's funny. Some of you right now are thinking, man, that's a lot of money. However, you guys would buy a DHU for $2,000. You'll make $100 a day. In 20 days it's paid for, and after that it's pure profit. And you're like, yeah, that's a great investment. The E-tes is $23.95, and Exactimate it's $225 a day with the air mover. And in 12 days it's paid for, and after that you'd still profit. So the E-tes actually has a better ROI, return on your investment, than a DHU. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. And right now we have a special promotion through L-Care that you can get 2 E-tes units, 2 Smart Dry kits, and 2 Omni Air Movers for $195 a month. For 36 months. You can pay it off at any time with no prepayment penalty. And don't forget, the E-tes is $225 a day. So you got 2 of these. Now you're making $450 per day with Exactimate. But your monthly payment's $195. Great promotion. So see Ernie and Dan at All Care, and they can give you a little bit more information on that. So the E-tes low-profile unit, let me show you that you can actually turn on and off the system all by itself. On the screen, it's actually going to tell you what the air temperature is, what your surface temperature, your relative humidity, your moisture content percentage, and there's 3 ways of turning off the E-tes. One is the moisture content percentage. So what happens is you always have to find the dry standard, right? So let's say your dry standard is 12%. So you're actually going to input that into the E-tes, and these pins are measuring moisture percentage and surface temperature. So you put these into the sill plate, the drywall, the wood floor, whatever you like. Once it reaches the dry standard, it'll turn off the heating element and stay off. So you don't need to worry about over drying anything. The other one is the air temperature. Let's say I don't want the room temperature to get over 100 degrees. Not a problem. I'll set the E-tes at 100 degrees. I'll put this at eye level, 6 feet maybe, tape it to the wall, and once it reaches 100 degrees, it'll turn off the heating element. At 97, it'll go back on. It turns it off, turns it on, turns it off, turns it on. Now some of you right now are thinking, you know what, that's too hot for the customer, they're not going to like it. So my question to you is this, and you can offer this to your homeowner. Mrs. Jones, I have an option. I can dry the structure in 4 days, or I can dry it in 2 days. If I dry it in 2 days, it's going to be pretty warm and pretty quiet. If I dry this in 4 days, it'll be a lot more comfortable and very loud. What would you like? And what do you think the homeowner's going to do? She wants this nightmare to end. But you're also going to make basically the same amount of money in 2 days instead of doing it in 4 days. It also has a remote exhaust controller, so you can set the air temperature exhaust at 95. It'll send a radio frequency and turn on your exhaust if you want. It'll turn it on and turn it off. Surface temperature sensor, you set this on to take this down to the wood floor if you like. And let's say you don't want the wood floor to get over 110, 115 degrees. So we tent it, set the temperature, whatever temperature you like, and it turns off and turns on, turns off, turns on. It's kind of like having a technician on the job. The E-tes also is a data logger. Software is free. What happens is you download the software from a website at testdryingsystem.com. Excuse me. When you go check on the job, turn off the E-tes, put in your flash drive, put it back on. It downloads all the information, and now you have a graph to document everything that's going on. I do CE classes around the country. And let me tell you what the biggest difference that I've learned in 3 years from the insurance side, and this is from the East Coast to the West Coast, north to south. The biggest difference between an independent restoration company and a franchise is this. 30% of the independent restoration companies document and validate their jobs. 85% and plus for franchises document and validate their jobs. That is the biggest reason insurance carriers like to use franchises. Guys, you have DUs, you have air movers, you have great customer service, you have the knowledge, but you're not documenting the jobs properly. So that means 70% of the independent restoration companies do not document or validate their job as done. And with this promotion of the E-tes as well as a remote field commander, now you will have charts and timestamps of what's going on in your environment. So the E-tes will give you 16 different readings. You just click on which graph you want to see. So we have surface temperature, air temperature, relative humidity, moisture content, time, date. You have all that documentation. So when you purchase the E-tes, recommend getting the Smart Dry kit with it. That'll give you a moisture probe sensor, air temperature sensor, surface temperature sensor, 2 10-foot extension cords that you can extend the readings out, remote exhaust controller, and a carrying bag. There is a special promotion for the E-tes SD units. This is not the low profile, but the SD. You can get the 120 unit for $18.95 and the 240 for $19.95, plus the Smart Dry kit if you're interested in that. So we're almost done. So when would you use the E-tes units? You would use this on hardwood floors, cabinet drying, concrete, attics, wall drying, subfloor, crawl spaces. Guys, it doesn't matter what situation you have, and it doesn't matter what time of year. Wintertime is when people think that's when you use heat. This test and E-tes was developed in Atlanta, Georgia. Jeremy Reitz has his own restoration company, so he's not just a manufacturing. And he uses this in Atlanta during the summer when it's hot and humid. Matter of fact, the 2 states that have the most E-tes units is Phoenix, Arizona, and Michigan. 2 totally different environments. But guys, we're drying inside a structure. That's what we're drying. Not outside, we're drying inside. And we have to get the heat to the wet materials. So if you can't float the carpet and you want to just do a top-down drying, that's fine. You can do that. You can float the carpet. That's where you're going to get most of your heat, though, to the sill plates. You can use the Flexi-Dry to dry out cabinets, cupboards. You can use it for wall drying. You can put the E-tes on its back. You can use it E-tes with lay flat ducting. This is 14-inch lay flat ducting. Okay, we're not trying to burn a house down, gentlemen. We're just trying to increase the temperature of the wet material. And so before I finish, I will tell you this. Whatever the temperature of the air is going into the air mover and through the E-tes, you're going to increase it about 30 degrees. So if the air temperature is 70 degrees, the temperature coming out of the heat is 100. We actually want the temperature of the air about 95. I do not want the air temperature at 120. I want the wet material at 120, but I don't want the air temperature. So about 95, between 90 and 100 degrees, is a great temperature for the E-tes to work, and you don't have to worry about over drying a lot. In addition, you can use the E-tes with the GMS distribution box. This distribution box has already the 2 4-prong adapters, 2 3-prong adapters, 30-foot extension cord, and a carrying case. And it has 4 20-amp breakers. That means that you have 48 usable amps, regardless if you plug it into a dryer or a range. So that means you can plug in 2 E-tes units, 20 air movers, or 12 air movers and 2 DUs. But for $8.99, you can't beat it, and it's a great tool. You can also use the E-tes in crawl spaces as well. So again, gentlemen, ladies, I really do appreciate your time to give me to help you understand the science of direct heat drawing. I don't see any questions in the chat room or the question box. It looks like I must have answered all your questions. You can call me direct for more information on the remote field commander. My number is 727-657-1563. I also want to thank Ernie and Dan at All Care Distributors in New Jersey for sponsoring this webinar. And also please take a look at our website for more training videos at testdrawing.com. So guys, thank you so much for your time. I don't see any questions. All of you are on mute just because of the background noise, but it looks like I must have answered all your questions. So have a great weekend. Thanks for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.